I'm going to take down the diagnosis of gender dysphoria, and I'm going to do three things. One, I am going to expose that there is no such thing as an innate identity. Two, I am going to expose the predators who sat on the committee for the creation of the diagnosis. And three, I am going to expose it as a gigantic piece of sexism, not based in any kind of reality. Okay, so this diagnosis, I think it's really important to take it down because I think it is the last bastion of people really having this empathy trap that there are some people who truly, have the wrong identity for their body, which is ridiculousness. Identity is a world defining idea that you hold about yourself. And identity can be a lot of things, and there is no right or wrong identity for your body. People have all kinds of identities that they carry about themselves, some more important than other, but the self, the holisticness of the self is much bigger than any one egoic identity attachment. And some people are attached to an identity that has to do with their vocation, like I am a writer, or I am a lawyer, or I am an artist, or I am a doctor, a healer. That is their whole identity, but that's simply a vocation. It's just one part of their entire life. Or sometimes even parents, I am a mother, and then when they're empty nesters, they go through a confusing period because that was their whole identity, but they realize they are so much bigger than just that one part of their life. So identity is not innate, it is formed. And you can have an identity that causes you discomfort. There are people out there who think I am a loser, and they repeat that to themselves all the time, and it causes them incredible distress and discomfort. Young men who think I am an incel. There is a whole incel culture of men who identify as incels, and that causes them distress. Your identity can cause you distress. So just because your identity causes you distress does not mean your body is a problem. It means you have a mental thought loop about yourself that is causing you distress. So the definition for gender dysphoria within the DSM, which is the Diagnostic Manual, which, by the way, is a privately owned document created by the APA, American Psychological Association. So that diagnosis is defined as one's social, political, public lived role. Okay, so that is a role. And the second, gender assigned at birth, that means sex. So they're using gender in two different ways. It's meant to be confusing. It's purposely confusing. Now, your social, public, political role. There is no social, public, political role for your body. There is no right role for your body. So that is really sexist and regressive in the first place, to say that your body innately comes with a social, public, political, lived role. Okay. And that identity, if you think that your body comes with a role, that in itself may cause you distress. If I think, if I accept the projections of culture about me and what women are supposed to be according to culture, that may cause me discomfort. But rather than think that my body is wrong, I have the agency to critique the culture that projects that role onto me. Second of all, whatever distress you have about your body as it pertains to the role that you think you should or should not have in society, that is unrelated to the actual physical experience of that opposite sex. So for a boy or a man to have distress over his own body and reject his sex as he rejects the identity, the gender identity, the social, public, political role associated with his sex, he rejects that. That is unrelated to the actual lived, embodied experience, the experiential experience of being a female human being on a female physical developmental path. So that his own sex rejection is unrelated to the lived experience of developing along a female pathway. The identity that he is attaching to is an externalized, objectified fantasy. He has no way of experiencing it from the inside. It is external to him. He is looking at women, objectifying women and that experience, agreeing with the sexist projection onto women, and then trying to literally purchase and put on and own that objectified projection. So it's very sexist. It is very objectifying. It is compartmentalizing because he picks and chooses the parts of women that he wants to put onto his face. And again, it's an objectified fantasy because he has no actual basis for any understanding of the lived female experience. So it is rooted in objectified sexism. So the entire diagnosis is sexist. And it is also ridiculous because, again, there is no right or wrong identity for one's body, and any discomfort with your conception of your own identity, that needs to be addressed at that level, not at the physical level of cutting up your own body to somehow match your ideas about identity. Second of all, okay, and I know this is getting long, so maybe you're still with me, maybe not. But this diagnosis, okay, some of the men who sat on the committee for this diagnosis, Thomas W. Johnson, also was a formative member of the Eunuch Archive, which is a whole website about eunuch fetishes, including child castration fetishes. That is what he was a part of. A man who is part of a website about child castration fetishes, sat on the committee for the creation of the diagnosis of gender dysphoria, which leads to child castration. So this is very sinister. People need to understand these roots of what went into this diagnosis and be highly critical. The DSM is a highly fallible document. There are literally scores of books written critiquing the DSM, particular diagnosis within the DSM, and the DSM as a whole, and the fact that it is a privately owned document put out by the APA that has massive public implications. So to me, this diagnosis is to bypass the fact that we used to consider transvestism a paraphilia for adult men, a fetish connected with other fetishes. And there was no way that insurance was ever going to pay for adult men to enact their fetishes with cosmetic procedures. But if we make it something that kids can have and we prey on your empathy, then all of a sudden insurance is covering these procedures. So this is also very much insurance fraud. So to sum up, this is probably one of the worst diagnoses that has ever showed up in the DSM. It likely won't be there for long. There are a lot of mental health professionals who are pushing back about this. It has been exposed by the WPATH files. It has been exposed by the CAS review. And again, there's lots of us speaking up about the faulty nature of this diagnosis and the sinister nature of this diagnosis. So to repeat, there is no innate identity. That premise is false. The diagnosis itself is rooted in sexist objectification of women and human beings in general. And 3, it has sinister roots with men, adult men with fetishes who have an agenda. And those men literally sat on the committee to create it with their agenda. So for those reasons, I critique it as faulty. There is no such thing as gender dysphoria. So any of you who still have bought into that notion and have used it as an empathy trap, there is no such thing. All right. Thank you so much.